Hello and welcome back to lesson 5 of this introduction to designing for the web. In this lesson we're going to look at the more subtle elements of good design: styling, texture and iconography. Although subtle, these elements have a big impact on your design. They impact the feel of your design, and as they help to divide content, reinforce grids and provide emphasis, they're so important. There is near limitless ways you can approach the use of styling on your website, but like fashion, styling changes over time. For example, for a long time, skeuomorphic styling ruled. This styling endeavoured to make screen elements feel more like physical products, physical objects. Buttons would look like buttons with drop shadows and gradients to give them a 3D quality. But over time, skeuomorphic styling fell out of fashion and gave way to flatter design, such as this site on TemplateMonster. Although fashions come and go, the underlying stylistic elements rarely change. And it's these that we want to look at in this lesson. In particular, we're going to look at things like texture, boxes, arrows, dividers, and of course, icons. Let's begin with texture. Texture can be used to add character, as in the case of this extreme sports website. Notice how the texture background is perfect for hinting at the kind of dirt and grime that goes with a great off-roading experience. But texture can be used for a lot more than just adding interest. It can also be used to differentiate between different areas of the page. Notice how this rather elaborate antique site makes use of texture to draw your eye to the central area and to the separate sections lower on the page. But be careful, this antique site is teetering on the edge of that texture becoming distracting. When it comes to texture, subtlety is the key. So subtle, in fact, that most of the work done by the texture will be on a purely subconscious basis. One site I love for finding more subtle patterns, subtle textures for your designs is the appropriately named subtlepatterns.com. This site has a huge collection of textures that you can use in your design. Here's a good example of a textured design on TemplateMonster. Notice the subtle dappled effect of the background and the use of a gradient that draws your eye towards those glasses in the centre. Although the trend at the moment is towards flat design, this kind of subtle texture stands the test of time. It's understated and yet adds some warmth and character to your design that is lost on many of the flatter designs we see these days. But let's move on from texture and turn our attention to boxes, arrows and dividers. These are an invaluable set of tools in your arsenal because they help you group page elements and create a sense of structure on your page. To see what I mean, let's look again at that last design I showed you. Notice how the designer has used boxes and dividers to break up the content into different blocks. By visually grouping content such as who we are or what's new, the designer helps us to understand the page just by glancing at it. Boxes and dividers are a way of emphasizing the visual hierarchy we talked about in our earlier lesson. Notice too the use of arrows in this design. The designer uses the arrows to relate pieces of content together. For example, we understand that the text about an employee relates directly to the photograph above because there's an arrow pointing to it. These kinds of stylistic details are what ties a design together. They can also be used to emphasize important content as well. For example, the 3 boxes on this estate agent's website make it clear that these are the main options that are available for you to choose between. The use of boxes provides us with a visual indication of what's important and tells us what we need to be doing. But before we finish this lesson, I want to talk about icons and iconography. Many sites make use of icons to support different options on their website. And there's no doubt that icons can be a powerful visual cue. If I show you an icon like this, you instantly know it relates to some kind of calendar feature. Icons allow users to quickly scan a page and find what they're looking for. They're also, generally speaking, pretty universal. In other words, you don't need to read English or whatever language the website is written in to understand what an icon represents. Finally, they can save valuable real estate, reducing a long label to a single little icon. And that's particularly valuable when it comes to designing mobile websites. These things are all true if you make the right icon selection. The problem is that icons are not always obvious out of context. Let's look at that site I showed you earlier that made use of icons. But this time, let's remove the text. Would you have any idea what lay underneath each of these icons? Probably not. Now, in the case of this design, it doesn't really matter because there is explanatory text too. But if you're going to rely solely on icons alone, you need to be very sure that they're obvious. Don't try to be clever when it comes to icons. Don't try and be different. The thing is, as designers, we like to be original and creative. But when it comes to icon design, always go with the obvious association. If you're trying to represent calendar, use the standard kind of calendar icon. In fact, I have to say that if you're starting out in design, I recommend really that you only use icons to support your copy. Avoid using them by themselves because you probably don't have the experience to make good choices there. So where can you go about finding good icons to get you up and running if you want to try icons for the first time? Well, you can create your own, but the chances are you're not very experienced at doing that and probably don't have the time anyway. So a good place to start is with a site called the Noun Project. This site and app now allows you to search on thousands of icons and use them for free as long as you give the designer credit. A word of warning, however, icons come in many different styles. If you're using more than one icon on your website, it's important to ensure that they match one another. Just like you don't want to mix too many different fonts on your website, you don't want to mix too many styles of icons. The best way of avoiding this problem when you're using the Noun Project is to find an icon that you like and click through onto the author's page. You'll almost certainly find other icons in a similar style. Alternatively, a quick Google search will find a huge number of free icon sets where the individual icons are designed to work together. Hopefully now you can see how styling plays a subtle but important role in your designs. Boxes, textures, arrows and dividers all help to provide structure to your content, while a well-selected icon set can make scanning your page so much easier. But most of all, styling provides character to your design. The choice of icons you use combined with your choice of texture will help to give your site real personality that should, if done right, reinforce your brand identity. So that's about it for this lesson. In the next video, we're going to look beyond the kind of stylistic elements of design and focus on what's most important when it comes to the design, ensuring that your design is easy to use. But until then, thanks for watching.